Morning everyone. I'm going to speak up here because we're standing by the banks of the Shyok River in the Shyok Valley. We're heading through the Indian Himalaya on the way to Pangong Lake. We've just stopped by the edge of the river here because it really is an impressive spectacle. We're standing by the edge of a very energetic, sediment-laden river. We're kind of at the peak of the meltwater season, so the river's sort of near peak flow at the moment. And in some of the other videos we've talked about the abundant sediment supply that comes into rivers like this. And we've got a really good example just on river left there, across the far side of the river. There's a tributary fan that's supplying a lot of very coarse-grained sediment to the river. But the really impressive thing is the standing waves in this river. And you can quantify the amount of energy that's in a river through a concept called stream power. I won't go into great detail, but stream power is essentially the product of the slope of the river, which, as you can see here, it's quite steeply sloping, and the volume of water coming down the river, or the discharge. So slope times discharge essentially gives you stream power, and you can express that in terms of the amount of power supplied to each metre squared of the bed, in terms of watts per metre squared. Essentially, the higher the power, the higher the capacity of the river to transport sediment. So on a steeply sloping river like this, with lots of discharge supplied, it's got abundant capacity to transport the sediment, and you can sort of see that in the colour of the water. It's highly turbid, lots of material in suspension, but there'll also be huge volumes of material being rolled or bounced or slid along the bed of the river. And you can sort of get a sense of the size of some of the material the river can transport based on what we can see on the banks. So everything from silt and sand up through cobbles to very large boulders. So yeah, a very impressive spectacle.
So, many days on this side, I have a few questions that I will ponder upon about this valley. So, we are traveling through this valley, Shyok Valley, and we see that there are some sediments, otherwise embedded into high bed rocks.
Yep.
So, what do you reckon? What processes that might be responsible for those observations?
Okay, so yeah, as Matt was saying, there's old river sediments, very high elevation, so even 10 or 15 metres above the level of the road here, you can see old river sediments, but we've seen them many hundreds of metres higher up the cliffs. Essentially, in this kind of setting, on a timescale of hundreds of thousands to millions of years, the valleys go through periods of filling up and then cutting down again, filling up and cutting down, filling up and cutting down. The net trend is to cut down, but there are periods of time when they fill up. And as the rivers cut down, some of those older sediments are left as remnants high up on the valley side, so terraces effectively. So that's the long-term story. It's not a steady downward cutting, it's a very punctuated filling, cutting, filling, cutting. And as geomorphologists, we can learn to read the landscape, look for those older sediments, map them out, plot them up, try and work out a history of that filling and cutting.
Thank you.